Masinya Attorneys Incorporated, a boutique commercial and taxation law firm in mid-range Johannesburg, South Africa. Strategic lawyers on point with more than 20 years of practice experience. We are professional, capable, and qualified.
Hello, brothers and sisters. Thank you so much for joining me right here in Solomon's Temple. My name is Solomon Izang Ashams. It's so great to have you here this day. I would say good morning to some of you, good afternoon, and good evening to some of you. I understand we're in totally different time zones. It's about 7:17 in the evening here in Johannesburg, South Africa. What is the time saying right now where you are? Are you in Europe, America, Asia, across the African continent? Please make sure you comment, make sure you interact in the comment section. And thank you so much for being here. It's so good to have you here. Today I'm going to bring a concluding part, just kind of like summary again of my experience, my prison experience, part 2. That's what I'm going to do. And then on Friday, I'm going to talk about how I almost got deported. Whilst I was in prison, I actually went to court again because there was an application for me to be deported back to my country of origin, which is Nigeria. I mean, how do you want to do that? Somebody was talking to me earlier on YouTube, and he was like, "Oh no, you're gonna get deported soon and all that." And I could just feel that this person doesn't understand the laws. He doesn't understand how things work. If you are not illegal, if you are not acquired any sort of documentation in an illegal way, there's just no way you're going to be deported, especially for people don't understand these things. Somebody said, everybody that goes to prison have a criminal record. It's like, what is a criminal record? What is the process of a criminal record? Would you have a criminal record if your fingerprints was never taken? Because when you get arrested, like a lot of the criminals I met in prison, whenever they get arrested, they take their fingerprints to go and check if they have any previous conviction, any previous criminal record, because it's the fingerprints that they do that with. So the person was just saying, no, you cannot. We have to understand the way the law works. And I met quite a lot of people in prison. My prison experience was full of ups and downs. It was full of the presence of God, the pain of not having my family around me, the brokenness of watching people abuse drugs, use drugs on themselves. So it was full of just so many different experiences. But thank you so much, everyone who is here right now. Malaya here saying good evening, Uncle Solomon, and everyone watching from the UK. Great to have you here. Great to have you here. Kendi sending love and prayers from New Jersey. Thank you. Naomi, Genesi, thank you for being here. Choni from Linksville, Figgy Lay, great to have you here. Also, Delicious, Mishak in Pretoria, awesome. Face from Midrand, New Creation as usual. Thank you, B. Thank you, Aminata, First Lady from Limpopo. Lindo, you're first to get here. Zakrai, good to have you here. Evelyn, thank you, everybody. Good to see you. Good to see you too, Kazembi, Jack, awesome. Brenda from Jamaica, and also the Chief from watching from the UK. Thank you guys, every one of you guys. Thank you so much. I really appreciate you guys. Don't forget, please make sure you follow. Make sure you subscribe. That is right here on my YouTube channel. Make sure you click the subscription button, and also please like the video. Right? Please like the video. There's a lot that I want to share. I'm gradually getting my mind back into into creating content. There's quite a lot of issue. A lot of people have been asking me some update on a bishop called Bishop Stephen Zondo here in South Africa, who You guys know he's been talking about me for some time. Right now, after quite a number of years, he's in court because he felt I was giving wrong information about him. But I received so many allegations, and I kept saying, this man is not a man of God. He's using women. He is bringing in sort of like witchcraft into the church and everything. And this is the man who came on TV and said stuff about me. Watch this. This is what he said about me.
They say you are a witch warlord. Why
do you think it's taking long for the police to charge him?
You know how many case numbers have been thrown away? Zondo is like a mafia.
It annoys me when you mention the name Solomon. I don't know him.
Zondo has left God. God has left him. I'm not even going to call him bishop because he's not worthy of a bishop.
Well, this guy Zondo is actually right now facing in court. He's in court right now facing charges. He's facing so many charges. His trial began for 3 weeks. It's going to go on non-stop. So check out what he said about me. It's... And sometimes when you talk about these people, a lot of people don't understand you because they don't know the kind of information that is available to me, that I have at my disposal. I have so much information about some of these people that you blow your mind totally. And after like 5-6 years, now the man is right now facing in court. Women are coming and testifying what he did to them. People are coming and testifying what he did to them. I'm going to try to go to court next week because I think next week is going to be the last week of trial. But I've been talking and I'm exposing this man for years. Nobody was, was interested. Some of the victims were afraid and they don't want to come out and speak and all that kind of stuff. Oh, wow, Malaya. Thank you, Malaya. Malaya gave £9, via super sticker. Thank you for your contribution. I really appreciate each and every one of you. Please, if you want to give on super sticker, go ahead and make a donation on super sticker. And also, if you want to give on PayPal, that's another option. PayPal is solomontalks@yahoo.com. solomontalks@yahoo.com. Well, I want to read to you as I go into talking about my prison experience, part 2. I want to read to you. This is my journal that I had when I was in prison. I wrote quite a lot, as you can see, it's all here, just quite a lot of my thoughts, what I saw, how I was processing and everything. So this is day 6, and this day 6 was still in quarantine, and this is what I wrote in day 6. I'm just going to read some part of it for you. I said, I'm beginning to think I'm too hard with my words on my fellow prisoners with my morning prayer and Bible study. But then they are hardened criminals. Most of them are only familiar with hard talk, tough love, bold and assertive instructions. My prayer is always for the word and prayer I share every day to serve as seed in their hearts and hopefully germinate at the right time in their lives. This morning, I shared about fighting your Goliath from 1 Samuel chapter 17, the story of David and Goliath. I explained to them that it's the Goliath in their lives that brought them to prison. The Goliath defeated them instead of them defeating the Goliath. The Goliath might be dishonesty, impatience, anger, taking what belongs to somebody, robbery, theft, possession of an unlicensed firearm, etc. I challenge them to confront the Goliath in their lives. If not, they will keep going in and out of prison. I woke up with a headache from the constant smoke in our prison cell, emanating from the different kind of drugs smoked all day by about 90% of the prisoners. Sometimes I wonder if I am in a prison cell with prisoners going through rehabilitation or in a drug den with drug addicts satisfying their addictions and cravings. Drugs in prison I discovered are cheaper and easier to access: weed, mandrax, tick, heroin, crystal meth, etc. Matter of fact, I saw heroin for the first time in my life today. The prison is a very big market for drug dealers. They have many runners who retail these products, and everyone gets a cut from the sale. Just a little bit, I mean, for day 6, it goes on and on for day 6, but I just wanted to share that just as an intro into what I'm, what I'm going to be talking about. So I was there for, if you haven't watched the first part of the video, my prison experience, please go watch it. Just a couple of videos behind. Just go watch it and watch that, just so I don't repeat a lot of what I had said. So whilst in prison also, I saw the way prison wardens actually beat up, dehumanize prisoners. There was this situation where there was 3 prisoners who got into a confrontation. They wanted to fight. They fought, but it wasn't like really fighting, you know. So other 3 prison wardens came and now said they're going to discipline them, and they beat them up. You know, like beat them up. They use their, you know, the stick that they hold and hit them on their shin. They told them to lie down. They were kicking them. They were beating them. Even the prison warden came out with, there was blood on them because of the way they did that. You know, whilst I was watching that, it was traumatizing, and I just felt if I had my camera, I would take this, and this was going to go viral, and it would definitely be addressed. I understand that the prisoners were fighting, and prisoners are not supposed to, but obviously you're in prison where some people are on drugs and some people are frustrated, so that is bound to happen. But I also understand that the law does not allow the prison warden to discipline the prisoner in a violent way, hitting them physically, and that's what they did. Matter of fact, one of the prison wardens, after all of that, you know, he came and he was passing by me, and I could smell from his breath alcohol and smoke, like he smoked cigarette. So he was technically drunk. He said, "No, this is our prison. This is not Leo Cup prison. That's another prison. This is our prison, Johannesburg prison. You don't fight here." But if they fought, is that the right way? They didn't fight like serious fighting. I understand that prisoners actually they fight, and sometimes it gets very violent, and people lose their lives in prison. Matter of fact, a week before I came out, one prisoner, took the life of another prisoner. He used a screwdriver and hit him right here. So why did he do that? Because he cursed my mother. And that's not normal. So I saw that. And it was traumatizing for me. Watching that. Watching the way they were dehumanized and their dignity taken away from them. Being treated like they are slaves, like they are nothing. You could punish them another way, maybe put them in a single cell, isolate them, or deny them certain privileges for a certain time. And you see, watching that was really difficult for me. Thank you, Janessa. Janessa just gave £10, €10 rather, via super sticker. Thank you so much. Really appreciate you. And I also had an encounter. Some of the prison wardens that are familiar with what I do outside prison, like exposing false prophets and talking about Christianity and defending Christianity on TV and social media and YouTube and all that, because some of them do follow and they know me. When I stepped in there, they were familiar with me already. Sometimes the prison wardens now call on me and say, "Hey, Solomon, come over. Let's talk about ancestral worship." I think it's biblical. A lot of the prison wardens believe in ancestral worship, where you worship your ancestors, you sacrifice to your ancestors. You believe that your ancestors actually have something to do with your life now. If things are not going well in your life, you have to go and consult your ancestors. You have to go and speak to them. You have to go and make a sacrifice. You have to go and slaughter some animal. We don't do that from the part of Africa where I come from. We don't do that. But in Southern Africa, especially South Africa, is very familiar. For those of you guys who are in Europe and America, and also from the East or West Africa, maybe you're not familiar with that kind of lifestyle. And they are Christians. They believe in scriptures, but also they believe in ancestral worship. So I normally have this huge debate with some of the prison wardens and say, look, I go through scriptures and I do not see verses where ancestral worship is actually encouraged and endorsed. But I actually see where ancestral worship is actually discouraged. So they will go on and on. Well, before Abraham, before the Bible, how did our ancestors worship and communicate to God? I said, look, the Bible is just a book. It's not the commencement of our communion with God. It was just the documentation of it. So don't put the whole of Christianity into a book, the whole of our relationship. Okay, Christianity, you can say that because Christianity is actually not a name that it is a name that we gave ourselves. It was a name given to us. After Christ arose and people now saw other people that had been with Christ, they now said, they're Christians in the book of Acts. But our relationship and communion with God existed far before the Bible was written. There was communion. And we have to understand that. You remember in the book of Genesis where it says, in the beginning in the beginning God created this and everything was without form or voice, and there was a spirit that was hovering, and so the Spirit of God is actually what had been for people pre-Bible times. And the Spirit of God has been as long as God has been. So for you to try to put Christianity or put our faith, maybe I say that, in a box, it's a bit shallow. Because our faith, our belief has been in existence as long as God created us, right from when He created us. So what happened also, one of my experiences is meeting a transgender prisoner. I don't know if I should say a he or a she, but fact is, the person is a he and on transition to becoming a she. So it's like transgender. When I met them, I was talking to this prison warden about all this biblical perspective to ancestral worship and all that. And he now came and he was interested, or she now came and she was interested. And she started asking questions. And I could see she wanted to really speak. He wanted to speak to me. I don't know why I'm calling her she, because he was all dressed as a woman. There's weave, beautiful weave. There's a makeup, lipstick, rings, and some, bangles, you call it, and you see the person dressed in tight dress, the prison uniform, because we all had prison uniform. And they're now engaging me in the fact that the Bible is anti-transgender, that the Bible is sort of like homophobic. I said, I don't think so. The Bible is not homophobic. The Bible is not anti-transgender. Matter of fact, the God of the Bible is the one who created every man and woman. So why would he now begin to be anti that person? Our choices might be against his expectation for us, but that doesn't mean he's going to be anti us. Our choices of the kind of sexual orientation that we embrace, the kind of gender that we speak like you, doesn't mean that God doesn't accept you. He accepts you, even though he does not approve of your choice. So we had a great discussion around it. And I asked him, what's your name? And say, my name is Beverly. But people call me Ntabiseng. So that man has actually adopted the name of a woman already. And that's the way that they feel. And we actually plan to meet later on and speak more about it, but we never did. I didn't even have a spoon and a bowl to eat. I didn't know that when you go into prison, you have to bring all these things. They don't give you a plate so you can eat, a bowl so you can get your food. He actually promised to get one for me. And one thing with this transgender, gay, lesbian, and gay and gay, transgender and gay inmates, prisoners, is they don't allow them to stay with us. They put them in single cells. So they had an exclusive cell where it's just them, and they have single cells. Why? Because they actually discovered that the male prisoners, go after them and want to have sex with them. Can you believe it? And the men might not be gay, they might not be homosexual, but they want to have sex with them. So they now put them in single cells somewhere separately. And for me, it was just the fact that, I could have a conversation with somebody who is trans, as they call themselves, and you could see their love for God, but you could also see that their choice of their sexuality isn't biblical. And there's no way you can force the Bible to change its position. The position of the Bible remains. Even if you don't agree with it, it's not going to change it. You can disagree with it all that you want, but it's never going to change it. I also met a friend, Ndu. I met him. We're in the same cell. Ndu has been to prison several times before now. Ndu is from Alex. Alex is a small township or location just outside of Sandton in Johannesburg. Alex is known as a very big crime-ridden place where criminals hide. Matter of fact, Ndu told me that in Alex, there is no family that does not have a criminal. Just to give you a clue about Alex. It's a place of poverty, it's a place of brokenness, it's a place of teenage pregnancy, a place of alcohol and drug abuse. And Ndu somehow, wanted to become friends with me, and we became friends. They actually call him Stolen Goods. That's his nickname. Stolen Goods. He knows how to steal. Ndu has taken the lives of people. He told me, Pastor, he calls me Pastor, I'm not proud of what I did. Ndu he's a panel beater. And when car hijackers go hijack cars, they come to him to change and reconfigure the car, so they can take it across the border into Malawi or Zimbabwe or Mozambique to sell it. That's Ndu. Ndu goes out, they go on a farm and rob farmers, white farmers, Afrikaners. and take their guns and take their money and take whatever they can find. Very lovely. God taught me how to humanize criminals, because now you become friends with criminals and you hear their story over and over again, and it's like, but this person is just a person. Outside prison, when you hear someone is a criminal, you try to like, whoa, whoa, whoa. But here you have to befriend them. My friends became criminals in prison. All my friends were criminals. You not try to see them as human beings, even though they have a story that is just so scary. That's why they actually ended up in prison. But anyway, on stolen goods, Ndu, he's always like, hey, Pastor, I really want to change my life, and I really want to do. And stolen goods actually he has 5 children from 3 different women. He is still unmarried. He's in his 40s. And also he's HIV positive. He told me, and I tried to follow up with him. Have you taken your medication? Have you taken your medication? There was a point in the prison cell where I was, where I think it was about a week before I left, there was these two young men that were brought into a prison cell, and they were given a bed to be in, because after the quarantine where I spent 10 days, we moved out and we put into different cells, and they moved me into a cell that the cell is no smoking and no drinking, no smoking cell basically. So everyone, you don't smoke in the cell. Even if you're a smoker, you smoke outside later, but you don't smoke in the cell. So the cell is exclusively for people who do not smoke, and also people who are trying to quit smoking, just so they can regulate the way, the way that an amount of smoke that they take. So 2 young men in their like mid-20s were brought into a prison cell, and I noticed there's like, okay, we have new cellmates here. They came and they were in. Later on, I discovered that the 2 young men were brought in because they were in some other different cell, and they were acting as a wife to other 2 prisoners. So they were their wives. So these 2 prisoners were sleeping, all the prisoners were sleeping with them. One was a gang leader of a gang called the 29. No, 28. 28 is a gang with strong presence in Cape Town, and they're involved in drug dealing and stuff. And the guy was actually a Muslim. They described the guy for me as a Muslim. I remember seeing him with a heart. He has a beard, and he's always walking up and down, talking to people in a very strange way. He said, no, that guy is a gang leader. And in prison here, he's one of the prolific drug dealers. And this young man, one of these young men, was actually like his wife. So he sleeps with him. And the second young man also was sleeping with another man. So they had to now, there were complaints and their observations, so they had to now move them from the cell where they were and move them away and brought them to our cell. Because they were sleeping with these older people and gang leaders, because they would offer them anything. They would offer them, you're going to eat nice food, you're going to have a beer, a drink when you want to, you're going to have drugs when you want to, they can buy you something nice and all that kind of stuff. That's it. And when I discovered that, I felt really sorry and really sad for these 2 young men. And you see them, they're young. it was yeah, it was an experience. You know, you normally hear of men serving as the wives of other men, of young boys serving as wives of older men in prison, men that are more influential in prison, and you tend to like, no, I'm not even sure that happens. But then now face to face, just across my bed right there, are these two young men that were brought in here because they wanted to isolate them from the older men they've been sleeping with, the older men that they've been, you know, they've been with. It's so sad what you see when you're in prison. There was a certain captain who was the head of the section where I was, the section of the prison where I was, who knew me from television and knew my investigation of Bishop Zondo and so on. And he's always interested in me. So sometimes he calls me to his office and we just chat and chat and chat. We talk about stuff. He's also believes in ancestral worship and all that kind of ancestors and all that kind of thing. There was a time he was even on the phone. I ran into him and he was on the phone with his wife and he's like, "Hey, I'm with Solomon right now. Say hello to Solomon." The wife was like, "Hello, Solomon. We love you. You are the most courageous journalist I have ever seen. Don't be sad. You're gonna get out of prison now." It's like, wow. On the day before I left, on the day before he left, he was going off and he was not gonna be around when I leave. So I said, "No, Captain, I want to pray for you before I leave." And he was like, really? I said, yeah. And you could see he loves God. He says at 12 p.m. he prays at 12 a.m. he prays to his ancestors. And at 5 a.m. he prays to God. So we've had like really intense conversations, and debates just around scriptures. But I could see that his values are totally, some of the things that I picked up, his values are not aligned, to biblical values. Very lovely guy, always full of smiles. And I said, "Captain, I want to pray with you before I leave." He said, "Yeah, we can pray tomorrow at this time. Just come." So I came the next day. We went into a room and I shared with him from the book of Isaiah. I think it was Isaiah 41, and then prayed for him because they are leaders there. That's one thing I did with some of the prison wardens. They are leaders in prison. And they need our prayers also. They need our encouragement also. It's not easy to be in prison. It's a different spiritual atmosphere. When I came out of prison, I just felt like something left me. Like there was this heavy stuff that I've been carrying and he left me. And now I feel weak. That was why last week throughout, I just felt exhausted. Because of the spiritual climate there is totally different. It's what you get when you got to like Sodom and Gomorrah. And speaking of Gomorrah, there's actually a prisoner that we met. His name is Gomorrah. Gomorrah, he's the main chief marketer there. He can sell anything for you. He's always trying to sell something. He was trying to sell some shorts, like swimming shorts or running shorts. And he's like, Solomon, look at you. You sleep in your uniform every day. Morning, you sleep with your uniform. You wake up in the morning with your uniform. You go to sleep in the night. Hey, come and buy these shorts. Gomorrah is a very funny guy. It's in my journal. He's some sort of a character. He's from Alex. And Alex is also known as Gomorrah. That is Alexandra. Janisa says it's very hard to digest today's topic. Yeah, I'm sorry. I just have to share what I'm sharing today is really hard, difficult. I saw how corruption was ravaging the prison. I saw how cell phones, how prisoners were in possession of cell phones. How did they get cell phones? Well, some of them smuggled it in, but their chances of doing that is very little. But a lot of them actually got their cell phones through the corruption of the prison wardens who would say, "Look, Ask your family, ask your friends to bring you a cell phone. I'll meet them by the garage outside the prison. And then I'll bring your cell phone in here, but you're going to pay me 50 Rand, which is like what? $4. So anything you want, I can get it for you, but you have to pay me for transporting the phone from your family outside of the prison to you. If you want money, you can ask them to send you money, e-wallet through one of the banks. They send you the details and you give me the details. I will go out, I'll get the money for you and bring the money to you. But then for every 200 Rand, I take a 50 Rand. Corruption. That's why they have the money in prison to buy drugs and buy drugs and buy drugs and buy drugs. There is a shop in the prison, but you're only allowed to shop there once a month. And only, I think, you shop for just under 300 Rand. And the money needs to come from your family. They will put the money into the account of the prison. So the money doesn't even come to you. So you can shop and buy some stuff like toiletries or whatever and get it on. But the corruption of drugs, there is no shortage of drugs in prison. You more like, are you in a rehabilitation center or you in a drug den? Seeing the way you're passing and these guys by the side are doing drugs. You're here and these guys are doing drugs. It's just a familiar sin that it's almost became normal for me, though it was my first time, but I was still shocked and everything, but it was just like normal for me. Because since day one when I came in, I saw that every single day. Every single day. I said I was going to talk about my how I almost got deported. I'll talk about that on Friday, so I'm going to jump that. I experienced xenophobia in the hands of people, some of the fellow prisoners who would not want to speak to me in English, but they want to speak in the local language, and I understand. And all I hear from their conversation is Nigeria. And that's when you know that when somebody's speaking Zulu to you or Sutu to you and all you hear is Nigeria, you know they got you. Even some of the prison wardens, their attitude being xenophobic. I was set up by some of my fellow inmates in prison just so I could serve a punishment. And unfortunately for them, the day that they set me up that I was supposed to be punished, that was the same day I was released. They were disappointed. But you see, when people want you to come to their level, but you're not in their level, but you want to relate with them, but it's difficult for you to do that because they feel like they are the elders in the prison. They feel that they have a badge, they serve in 15 years or whatever. And they set you up. That was actually being in prison made me realize how other people who are not non-South Africans, what they go through in the hands of people who are xenophobic. And for me, people who are xenophobic are just people who are just very uneducated, people who are broken. And xenophobia itself is just people who have a problem with themselves. And I've been in South Africa for over 15 years and I've never experienced that kind of level of xenophobia because I deal with other South Africans, but at my cycle that I operate in, they don't think that way. They don't think you are a threat. They don't think you are not South African, you're a foreigner. They don't think that way at all. Matter of fact, they want to know so much about where you come from and who you are. But the reality is, brokenness and sin has pushed people to bring division up, and see other people from other nations like they do not belong here in their country. You must go to Nigeria and see how we treat people who are not Nigerians, people who are foreigners. If you want to see Ubuntu for South Africans, if you want to see real Ubuntu, go to Nigeria. Ubuntu is like, what? How do I describe it now? It's just like being as hospitable as possible with someone who is your neighbor, someone who is from another place, another whatever. And we talk about it a lot in South Africa. But if you go to Nigeria, you would see Ubuntu. But that's just the reality, that people tend to be. And you have to understand also, for those of you guys who are in Europe and from across Africa, when you hear about xenophobia in South Africa, you have to understand that xenophobia, that this thing happens in places where there's just so much poverty, scarce resources. That's why this whole thing comes up. Where I stay and where I operate, I don't see that at all. And there's also history that has separated people from knowing the continent of Africa. And because of that, their view about Africa is not really broad, it's very narrow. So there are a lot of factors that contributed to having somebody telling you don't belong in this country. You don't belong here. Go back to your country. There's a lot of, and you somehow you need to give them benefit of a doubt if we really want to understand that. Because if you tell me to go back to my country, it just shows that I don't have a problem. You are the one who's the problem. And finally, I want to share about two people that I met who were serving a life sentence. Two people that I met who were serving a life sentence. First is a guy who we call Madala. He was in our cell. And he's been in prison for 17 years, the last 17 years. He's there for life. So he can only be considered for parole after 25 years. And the government need to decide if he's going to be on parole or not. Amadala was actually somebody who was involved in taking advantage of women. So he forced himself on women. He would trick women and then he forced himself on them and then he takes their lives. And he had done that too. He had done that serially. And when he was arrested, he was a member of ZCC, still a member of ZCT. He's always drinking this ZCCT. ZCC is like a church. It's not really a church. It's like a church and a cult all mixed up together, African tradition all mixed up together. And they have this special tea that they normally drink. They believe the tea has some sort of like health benefits or supernatural benefits to it. And you could see Madala has a TV in his corner in our prison cell. He has a small TV. He has his music. Around this time, his music is actually blasting. It's 8 p.m. now, so his music is actually, or his TV is on. He was different. He was serving a life sentence. And he doesn't mingle with the other prisoners. He helps the prison wardens in their office. Matter of fact, he wasn't even supposed to be sharing a cell with us. He's supposed to go to the section where they put people who are serving life sentences. Yeah, it was when he was first arrested, he said he spent 5 years in isolation in a prison cell, 5 years alone. You can imagine what that means. Your life is never going to be the same again. And then there's another Nigerian guy who came in before I left. His name is Peter. He was sentenced to life in prison. He's a drug dealer. I asked him to tell me the truth, what he does. And he said he was sentenced for life in prison for human trafficking, prostitution, and pimping, and what is it again? Yeah, there's another charge. And he said that he didn't do it. I said, what do you mean he didn't do it? That he was set up. I said, well, if you set up, then you can appeal. He's trying to appeal right now. But in our conversation, I discovered that he said he is a drug dealer. Actually, I said, well, you expose yourself in it. And now you are here, sentenced to life in prison. Life in prison. You know what that means? Life in prison? So minimally, you're going to spend 25 years. And after 25 years, it's not like you're going to be released. The government will decide if you're going to be released or not. If not, you spend the rest of your life in prison. I forgot to share with you about a story about a Zimbabwean guy who was a Muslim who I met in prison. He's an armed robber. He robs people. He was arrested somewhere in downtown Johannesburg, stealing expensive furniture, which he has sold already. He said, Solomon, I've already agreed with the buyer for 800,000. He was going to buy this. But on day 2, while we were moving the furniture, the police now came and surrounded the place. He was given 15 years in prison. Well, he told me about when he discovered that I'm a pastor. He said, pastors, now I don't trust them. I said, why? He said, in Rosettenville, a girl who worked with the church told us that the pastor has money. They normally have money, and we could come in and get the money so we can give her a cut. So in the night, we jumped the fence. We went in because the pastor lives in the same property where the church building was. We jumped in, we went to his house, and he wasn't around. So we met his wife, and we said, where's the money? Where's the money? She was crying and all that. Took them into the church. Right by the church, close to the altar, they're now under certain, there's like a carpet and all that I was put on there. There was money. And guess what? The money was actually counterfeit. Dollars counterfeit. So you can imagine a pastor had counterfeit money, hid it, and then there were drugs also. And we're talking about a pastor, a Nigerian pastor. He said, right in the church building, we took it off from the ground and we discovered money. We're disappointed because most of the money there was counterfeit money, dollars. But you could use it, but we're looking for real money, not counterfeit money. And then there were drugs. So this pastor himself is involved in drug dealing and also involved in scam using counterfeit money that is not it's not legit. Anyway, I have all of that in this book. In this book, I wrote all my thoughts and my journal. Hopefully, maybe early next year, I'm gonna put it maybe into a book also. And right now I'm gonna put it into a book and hopefully share it with everyone who would love to hear about my prison experiences and all that. And right now we're also working on a book just to give people a perspective on why I do what I do. We call it the false prophet slayer. False prophet slayer. We're gonna have the book very soon. So if in case you want to, pre-order, please send me an email or use the WhatsApp number that's there on the screen and send me an email. Just to give people an understanding on why I do what I do, because a lot of people misunderstand that. So hopefully we're gonna have this. Very soon coming out. So please watch out for that and make sure you send me an email or WhatsApp to pre-order. So I just wanted to share that with you guys. And in closing, just share a verse from 2 Corinthians chapter 12, verse 10. It says, for the sake of Christ, then, I am content with weaknesses, insults, hardships, persecutions, and calamities. For when I am weak, then I am strong. When I'm weak, then I'm strong. There's strength in weakness. There's strength in weakness only because of Christ. Christ in me, the hope of glory. He's saying, for the sake of Christ, I'm content with weaknesses, insults, hardships, persecutions, and calamities. Are you ready to go through all of that? Are you ready to go into your weaknesses to pop out and you are not scared? You're not trying to hide it. You're not trying to be strong by your own strength. Are you ready for insults? Are you ready for hardships, for persecutions, and calamities? And let God be, because when you're weak, then you are strong in Him for the sake of Christ. So I just want to encourage each and every one of us. Following Jesus, maybe it's not as easy as they told you, but it's as fulfilling as they never told you. You would never understand how fulfilling it is until you try to go through the insults and depend on Christ, through the calamities, depend on Christ, through the persecution, depend on Christ. Michelle says, it is well, God, you, sir. Olani, thanks, bro, for sharing your experiences. May the Lord reward you for your work you're doing. Thank you. Letitia says, I can't wait for that book. Shoni says, you really did a good job. You really did a good job for God in prison. We glorify God for your life. Amen. All the glory to Him. All the glory to Him. OG is well with you in the name of Christ Jesus. Amen. So thank you, everybody. Really appreciate you. I'm going to be back tomorrow, but on Friday, please watch out. I'm going to be talking about how I almost got deported, how whilst in prison, I had to be handcuffed. First time they put cuffs around my hands and taken to court for an application to deport me. So I'm going to share with you how all that went down, what happened, how it felt, and all that kind of stuff, and thank you so much for all your support and all that you've been doing. May the Lord bless you and keep you. May His face continue to shine upon you. Please do not forget to share this video. Do not forget to subscribe. God bless you and have a wonderful day.